Started with, we'll get the lights before we start.
Sure, that's fine. Thank you.
Today we have a presentation. The fellow that's presenting needs no introduction. As you know, everybody, does anybody not know Pat? There are many things I like about Pat. Pat is, his order of supply chain stuff is out of order. He believes it's trains, ships, and then trucks. And it's ships and trucks and trains, but we've been through that. He's also not very good in his professional football pickings, but you know, let that slide. You're not still a Redskins fan, are you?
I am for life.
Do they still play football? Or are they still
Oh yes, founded in 1932, won Super Bowl 3 times.
Yeah, like 100 years ago.
82, 87, and 91.
Wow, that was like the last century, you know.
Oh yes, before my time.
I remember when they were good. Well, not good, but okay.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, so what we're going to do is Pat has a presentation. Some of you may have seen this before. He has presented as part of the business conference on a couple of occasions. He's presented in this class before. Somebody put on one of my course evaluations last year, which I thought was hysterical. You know, why did you have a student present? And the reason in case you haven't figured it out, the reason Pat presents is he knows a little bit about trains, okay? And that's one of the big three modalities that we study. And I consider an expert on trains. Oh, there's Keith.
Yay!
You got it started? Yeah. You got it started? Yeah. When it's 22 degrees outside, it probably doesn't help. So the way this works is Pat will do his presentation. And we'll give him all the time he needs, but we'll put a limit of an hour and a half. Because he can go long-winded sometimes when he's off on trains. And then we had a 2-hour conversation in the hallway one time about them. And then afterwards, I'm sure he'll take any questions.
Yes, I will.
Conversation you'd like to have about it. Also, one of the things I really encourage you to do is take a lot of notes. I often ask Pat, I'm going to do it this time as well, if he will write some of the questions for the final exam.
I can do that.
Last time he did that, and we were able to use those questions to cover some of the train stuff. So,
Better yet, I'll send you the presentation after today.
oh, awesome. That would be perfect. So let me get the lights going, and then we'll get started. We want to make sure we can see the screen. Is that enough light?
Perfect.
Okay, because we got to see the pictures. So.
Right.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Morning, everybody.
Morning.
How is everybody today?
Good.
Oh, I know. It's really cold out there. It's like 21 degrees outside. Just want some snow.
Yeah.
Most of you know me. My name is Pat Sullen. I'm a senior here studying business. And today I'm going to present to you on how railroad logistics impact us both domestically and globally. But before I get started, I'd like to thank my family who's on the back today. Thank you for coming. I also like to thank your professor for asking me to speak with you today. It's personally one of my favorite classes in the business department, taught by one of the best professors that we have here at the school.
Oh, one up?
One of the best in the business department. Also, I would like to pass around some of my business cards. And I will start here with your professor. Just take one and pass it down, and has my contact information on there as well. First question is, how often do we rely on our railroads? Railroads are vital to our domestic and global economies because they transport large amounts of bulk material, final products, and passengers from place to place. If you remember from United States history in high school, you probably remember studying the Transcontinental Railroad. The Transcontinental Railroad was completed on May 10, 1869 in Promontory, Utah, when the Union Pacific and Central Pacific met. This was the first railroad that spanned from the East Coast to the West Coast. As you see in this photo here on the bottom right, it is the most iconic historical photo of this event. And today, May 10th is celebrated as National Train Day. What is carried by train? Think about it for just a moment. A lot of our everyday items, including some in this room, are transported by rail. And I list a few examples. The cars we drive, the steel that's used to manufacture them, and heavy equipment, fossil fuels that are used to fuel our homes and our industrial plants, the clothes we wear, and the food we eat. Now, when we see trains, what pulls them? Well, we see big engines like these. There are two builders in the North American continent, General Electric and Electromotive Division, or EMD, now serving under the name of Progress Rail. This is a General Electric locomotive. In fact, this locomotive was rebuilt for Norfolk Southern. The engine was originally built in February of 1996 at their Erie plant. Norfolk Southern retired the unit at the end of 2017. The unit was shipped off to GE's state-of-the-art Fort Worth plant and was rebuilt this past April with a brand new drive cab, electrical components, and an overhauled prime mover and a fresh coat of paint. This is classified as an AC44C's exhibit, as I stated above. Now, let's shift over to the Electromotive Division model. This is a GP38-2 locomotive. Its number, NS5290. That is the engine impact engine. The engine was built in February of 1973 for the Penn Central Railroad. It later served under Conrail and now serving under Norfolk Southern. This engine has 2,000 horsepower with an EMD 645E 12-cylinder, which is EMD's best prime mover. Now, when we see freight trains, we see lots of different types of cars because our everyday items are transported in a specific type of car. And here is a small list that we'll be going over today. Box cars and refrigerator cars. We see a lot of these on our manifest trains. The box car in the top left transports general merchandise that needs to be kept dry, like paper that we use to print our documents, televisions to watch trade videos and maritime movies, and also the computers that we use to type our documents and use social media. Now, a refrigerator car, as you see on the bottom left, is a box car with a refrigeration unit installed, like a refrigerator tray on the back of an 18-wheeler. It is used to carry perishable items like meat, cheese, and potatoes, like we see in our grocery store. One prime example is Tropicana. CSX has a large contract with Tropicana to move Jews from Jacksonville, Florida to New Bern, New Jersey, and the empties from New Bern, New Jersey back to Jacksonville. This is a very huge operation for CSX. Coal hoppers. We see a lot of these because of one place. It is known as Pier 6. That's the Norfolk Southern Coal Terminal, just on the other side of Old Dominion University. These cars are generally used to carry coal, sand, and gravel from place to place. Here I see a nice string of NS coal hoppers in Petersburg. We'll be seeing a coal train later in the video, and I'll talk to you about some of the hoppers. Okay, covered hoppers. We just saw the open top hopper. The covered hopper is a hopper with a cover on top of it, as the picture illustrates. This type of car is generally used to carry grains and fertilizers from place to place and keep them dry from the elements. Here we see a fairly new covered hopper with the brand new Norfolk Southern logo going through Salisbury, North Carolina over the summer. Gondolas. There are two different types of gondolas as I illustrate here in the slide. We have the traditional gondola on the top left and a ballast gondola on the bottom left. These two cars can serve different purposes. The traditional gondola, as you see above, carries loads including steel coils, scrap metal, and long pieces of pipe. They have removable sides for unloading and unloading easily at industrial plants. Now, the ballast gondola is interesting because it can dump on either side. How does it do it? It receives electrical current from the locomotive. And by remote control, this car will dump on either side of the track. These cars are mainly used for track projects or maintenance of way projects. This car was actually seen in Franklin, Virginia, about 20 minutes from me, on a recent track project about a couple of years ago. If you ever get to see track equipment on the railroad, it is a neat operation to watch. I have seen it plenty of times, and I know a friend of mine is on the track crew with CSX, and they do a lot of spot repair. And ballast gets delivered in one of these gondolas. Tank cars. We are seeing more and more of these because the fossil fuel business for the railroad is excellent right now, and it's continuing to grow. They are used to carry flammable liquids, including gasoline, propane, crude oil, liquid soap like we use to wash our dishes, corn syrup to manufacture soda, wax to manufacture crayons, and petroleum gas. And To know what's inside the tanker, there is a plaque that's in the bottom right of the corner of this tanker, and also there's a plaque located in the center of the cylindrical drum. And I'll list a few examples. If it says 1987, that's regular gasoline we use to fuel our cars. 1993 to fuel big trucks, that's diesel fuel. And 1093 is liquid propane. Flat cars. There are three different types of flat cars that we'll be talking about today. The traditional flat car, the bulkhead, and the super flat car. Let's talk about the traditional flat car first. The traditional flat cars seen here, they transport wide and oversized loads. And I list a couple of examples. New sections of track in the top photo, and trash dumpsters in the bottom photo. The trash has a cool story. The landfills in New York and New Jersey are so full right now, they cannot hold the trash. So, U.S. management and CSX have a contract to bring the load south from Selkirk, New York, down to Petersburg, Virginia, for Norfolk Southern interchange. Interchange means when two railroads join together to complete an operation. So, Norfolk Southern will pick up the loads, and bring them to Wakefield, Virginia, where they get them dumped. Then Norfolk Southern brings the empties back to CSX, and the process starts all over again. The bulkhead and the super flat car. The bulkhead flat car is a traditional flat car with one exception, with the two raised sides as seen above. That keeps the load from shifting forward and backward, and they mostly serve the same purpose as a traditional flat car. And see, this car was actually hauling brand new rebar that's getting ready to go for a concrete project. Now, the super flat car, or quote-unquote a low boy, is used to carry wide and oversized loads, including a gas turbine. This illustration here reminds you of the low boy trailer that's used in construction sites when they transport equipment from place to place. This car was brand spanking new right off the assembly line, and CSX was taking it south. Coil cars. We're starting to see these get on the rails because the steel business is very good. Excuse me. The coil cars are used to carry the large steel coils to different manufacturing plants. And a few examples are General Motors, Caterpillar to manufacture the heavy equipment, and General Electric to manufacture locomotive parts. Here I see one in Landis, North Carolina, about 20 minutes outside of Salisbury, on an NS manifest bound for Raleigh. Container cars. We've seen a lot of these because of our major ports, which we'll get to in a few minutes. The container cars are used to carry the containers from coast to coast. Here in this picture, you see a double stack, and we'll be seeing it in action with a stack tray here in a few minutes. As you remember from logistics class, there are three different types of containers: 20-foot, 40-foot, and 45-foot containers. And a 53-foot trailer is a standard truck trailer. So, when these containers are stacked on top of each other, they're held together by a pin to keep the containers from shifting. Here, this string of containers was taken in Altoona, Pennsylvania, the heart of the old Pennsylvania, going to the nearest terminal. Spine cars. As I just mentioned a minute ago, the standard truck trailer is 53 feet in length. This car is used to transport the 53-foot containers. And as you can see, there's a steel beam that runs right across the middle of this car. That's why it is called a spine car. And we see UPS trailers. CSX has a big contract with CSX has a big contract with UPS. And they transport the trailers from Jacksonville to New Jersey and New Jersey back. This is a big business for CSX. Auto racks. As mentioned previously, cars are transported by train. How so? They are transported in one of these cars. It's called an auto rack because these cars are enclosed to keep the new automobiles dry from the elements. These cars transport the new automobiles from the manufacturing plant, General Motors for example, to the distribution point. But we have a distribution point that's in the Hampton Roads area, which we'll talk about in a minute. They are bi-level. They hold up 12 new automobiles per car. I mean, and that's pretty good for an auto rack. And once you think the car that you drive might have been in one of these cars. Once these cars are loaded, they come to one of these places. This is the Norfolk Southern Automotive Distribution Point. It's located off of Wagner Road in Petersburg. I'm sure some of you have been over it before. This is a daily served terminal, and it's very, very busy. When the auto racks come in, they come here. The train will set them off. The crews over there will open the cars and unload the new automobiles, and then put them on trucks to distribute them to the nearest dealership. I'm proud to say I have been over it, and this place remains busy all the time. The caboose. Before I talk about the caboose, a common question is asked, have the railroads changed? Yes, they have, but they haven't changed that much. But one car you don't see anymore is a little caboose, as the slide has. The caboose was the last car of every freight train, and it served a vital purpose. You had 4 men on the crew, engineer and conductor in the locomotive, and the brakeman and flagman in the caboose. What was their job? Their job was to inspect the train from the back to the front, to inspect for defects, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Now, since the improvements of technology, these jobs have been cut, and the sightings of a caboose have become very, very rare. But you're still seeing a lot of these in railroad museums like the Suffolk Seaboard Station in Suffolk, about 5 minutes from my house, and some of the other museums across the country. Here I do a little video. We're going to look inside one of these cabooses. It's personally one of my favorite freight cars. All right, everyone, we are now inside this Norfolk and Western caboose that's on display here at the Southern train station. And as you can see, this is where the crew used to be. Sorry about the sound.
Right here is where one of the men would actually do their paperwork. They used to be on this desk, and they put it right here in this drop box. And of course, we have a furnace to keep them warm in the wintertime. The head, of course, and a nice refrigerator. That's where they used to keep everything cold. You have stove to cook the food, and of course, sink to wash their hands. This was like the home away from home, hotel on wheels. And as you can see, this is where they would sit, and the purpose of this window, I'm going to sit out here so you guys can take a look. This is a bay window caboose, which means the window is on the side of the car. And from this angle, you can actually see.
Let me stop the video for a second. As I just explained about the window is actually an angle, because when the train turns, you can see the locomotive and all the cars in front of it, and you can inspect that side of the train. That's where one man would sit, and the other man would sit on the other side to do the same thing. Now we'll talk about defect detectors in just a moment to talk about how the technology has changed the way railroads operate. As I just mentioned, defect detectors have taken the place of the caboose over time. This device is installed on main tracks every so many miles, depending on the railroad that you're watching, because all railroads have different mechanical aspects. They started using the devices in the 50s, but they did not start being regularly used until the 80s. So to figure out the number of cars based on the axle count the defect detector gives you, divide the axle count by 4 to get the number of cars. A computer program is installed on all of these defect detectors. That's how the information is broadcasted. And I have a few listed here. We're going to listen to a couple of examples. Each of these are broadcasting a little something different. So we're going to start with the Delaware Hudson, and the CSX defect detector is a local defect detector in the Petersburg area. And both of these defect detectors have long been replaced with new defect detectors.
B&H detector, mileage 173.3, checking southward train, temperature 60 degrees, axle count 342, no defects. Have a safe day, transmission over.
You heard in that defect detector, it talked about the railroad who was operating on the main, then you had the length of the train and where it was located and the temperature. So this is personally one of my favorites just because of the voice that is used, and recently Canadian Pacific recently replaced this one. And now we'll get to the CSX defect detector that a buddy of mine recorded from his scanner. And like I said, this defect detector has been replaced recently. That bit of silence you just heard, the train's entering the defect detector. Once it comes out, it will give the report. Should be here in a couple seconds. And the axle count that was given was 56 axles. That's about right for an Amtrak train. And once again, a buddy of mine recorded this, and I always enjoy playing this one. Now, the next slide is one of my favorite slides, and I love to pick on your professor on this one. Are trains more efficient than trucks? The answer is yes. Sorry, professor, have to do it. And this, in fact, is a Mack truck, and I put this in here for you because I know you love Mack trucks, right?
Of course.
But this is a fairly new Mack truck that I saw in Carolina over the summer. And of course, we see one of the trains in Salisbury. But the answer is yes. Railroads are more efficient than trucks because trains can go from point A to point B on a single gallon of fuel. An average locomotive has about a 5,000-gallon fuel tank. That's a lot of fuel. What does this mean? The railroads are taking 150 of these 18-wheelers off of the highway. That means less congestion on the highway, the roads are a little safer, and we burn and consume less fuel. Now, we talked about railroads in general and some of their operations. Let's narrow it down to some of the railroads in the United States. They're classified as Class 1 railroads. A Class 1 railroad is defined as a giant freight railroad that owns the majority of its tracks in the North American continent. And here we have several that we'll be discussing today. The first one, Norfolk Southern, my favorite railroad of all time. Based right here in good old Norfolk, right about 5 minutes from this campus. They serve 22 different states, and I mentioned a few of them up here. Coal is the top commodity for the company. And coal gets exported to different foreign countries through Pier 6, like we mentioned previously. And this, in fact, was a coal train I actually saw recently, with 2 locomotives up front going into the pier. More on NS, containers are the second commodity for the company, and that commodity is quickly growing. Most of the containers bound for Norfolk come from Chicago, Louisville, and Columbus. Here I have a couple of trains. The first train on the left has the auto racks, like we mentioned previously, bound for Petersburg. And we have an intermodal train going through Summit, transporting containers to NIT. More on NS, grain is the third commodity for the company. Grain season occurs about mid-fall to early winter. And according to John Pike, this is a real-life scenario here. According to John Pike, Operations Director of the Goldsboro Milling Company in Wayne County, North Carolina, he produces 500 million pounds of pork and turkey each year. He gets 40% of its grain from Carolina farmers, and the remaining 60% is coming from the Midwest. But each week, 185 of these covered hoppers, as mentioned previously, carry about 100 tons of grain roll onto his siding every week. So given the grain's bulk and distance traveled, rail is the cheapest method of transportation. And he has concluded regular rail dealers keep his stockpiles and storage and inventory costs extremely low. This right here is important because rail can move, like I mentioned, point A to point B, but you're taking 185 of these cars, the train can make it in one trip, rather as having 20 or 30 18-wheelers on the highway carrying a lesser amount. So this is why rail is vital to our economy, not only here, but the world. Norfolk Southern's competition, CSX. As some of you know, I don't like CSX. CSX is the second Class 1 freight railroad that's in U.S., and it's headquartered in Jacksonville, Florida. Fun fact is CSX was headquartered in our state capital until 2003, when they moved all the corporate positions down to Jacksonville. Containers are the top commodity for the company. Coal is the second, grain is the third. Containers that are inbound in Portsmouth come from Chicago and Columbus. Here I see two different trains, an intermodal and a manifest. Let's talk about the intermodal for a moment. As you notice, the locomotive is pointed in the other direction. Why is this? This method is called long hood forward because the back acted as the front and the front of the engine acted as the back. If there was a head-on collision between this train and another train, it would damage the back of the engine, not the front of the engine, and the crew's lives would not be lost. This was a practice that was used from about the 1950s to the early 90s. And a couple of examples were the Norfolk and Western and the Southern Railway. Here on the right, I catch a manifest train coming into Petersburg with the trash loads behind it, as previously mentioned. All right, Amtrak. Everybody knows what Amtrak is. They're America's passenger rail service. Quick show of hands, how many of you have ridden Amtrak? Okay, I've seen a few of you. For the ones of you who have not ridden Amtrak, it's an excellent experience, and I encourage you to do it. Amtrak is America's passenger rail service. They were founded by the government in 1971 to relieve all railroads from passenger service. And in fact, all the freight railroads back then also offered passenger service, including the Norfolk and Western, the Southern with their famous Crescent, the Great Northern with the Empire Builder, and the Santa Fe, the home of the famous Super Chief. All right, let's move on over from the East Coast to the Midwest. Union Pacific. Headquartered in Omaha, Nebraska, it was founded in 1865 by our 16th President, Abraham Lincoln. Sorry, President Johnson. They serve the Midwest and western portions of the country, and they serve a few of the following states as mentioned above. About 21% of their revenue comes from shipping industrial products, and 38% accounts for the intermodal and agricultural product shipment. Here I catch a UP locomotive on a manifest train over the summer in North Carolina. This train's a special one. When I was going over the summer, I met a young man who works for Norfolk Southern, and he was a conductor at the time. And that day, I happened to be in Landis, and I got to see him at work, and he waved to me from the cab. And this train right here holds a special place in my heart. Union Pacific's competition, Burlington Northern Santa Fe, now owned by Mr. Warren Buffett. They serve the same territory as Union Pacific, and they're headquartered in Fort Worth, Texas. In 2017, their revenue increased by 8%, bringing the total to $21.4 billion, a lot of money. Here I see a BNSF locomotive on Norfolk Southern tracks. Thinking, what's their locomotive doing on NS tracks? Well, when you run low on locomotives, you gotta lease power. In this case, Norfolk Southern was leasing power from BNSF at the time. They lease them on horsepower hours, how many hours to operate the locomotive. Once the lease expires, they return the locomotive to BNSF. All right, let's move on over to Canada. Canadian National, my favorite Canadian railroad, based in Montreal, Canada, and they're one of two major Class 1 freight companies. We'll talk about the second one in a minute. They serve the areas of Ontario, Montreal, and Quebec, and they also serve parts in North America, including Michigan, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Louisiana. CN is the largest railroad in Canada in both terms of size and revenue and physical network, and they're Canada's only transcontinental railroad that spans from the East Coast to the West Coast. Here, a friend of mine sends me a picture of a CN locomotive on lease to Norfolk Southern. The second Class 1 freight company in Canada, Canadian Pacific, based in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, on the West Coast. They are, like I mentioned, the second Class 1 freight company, and they serve from Montreal to Vancouver, a slightly smaller company. And they also serve parts of North America like CN does, including Minnesota, home of the Twin Cities, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Washington State. Here I see a CP locomotive on lease to Norfolk Southern. All right, now that we talk about our major railroads, let's talk about a smaller railroad called a short line. A short line is defined as an independent railroad company that operates over a relatively short distance. In Hampton Roads, we have 3 short lines, and here's the 3 that we'll be going over today. The first one on the list, The Norfolk Portsmouth Belt Line, based right over in South Norfolk, about 10 minutes from this campus, they interchange with CSX and NS to distribute the mixed freight to local businesses. Their primary service is delivering grain to local businesses. They're a very small company. Here are the two locomotives that they own, and I provide, the building information for both. And in fact, they're such a small company that Norfolk Southern owns the track, and they pay, I believe, a yearly lease to run their operations. And Norfolk Southern, as part of the lease, maintains their locomotives. And Norfolk Southern CSX power is present there. Shoreline Railroad number 2, the Commonwealth Railway, owned by the Genesee and Wyoming Company. They're based in Darrington, Connecticut, and they serve Suffolk and Franklin, Virginia, and they partner with CSX and NS in both divisions. And the Suffolk division, they have two responsibilities. They serve the basic chemical plant, about 15 minutes from my house, and they lease track to Norfolk Southern and CSX to move containers to and from Portsmouth. In the Franklin division, they serve the International Paper Mill to move the inbound cars around the plant and prepare the empties to go south on CSX. Above, we have two locomotives that they own. The 517 on the right, which in fact was originally built as a passenger locomotive in the 1950s, and Santa Fe modified it for freight service in the 1970s. And on the left, we have another locomotive, which was their most recent acquisition. That locomotive was acquired in 2013. Here are the locomotives in the Franklin division. I'm proud to say I went over there over the summer and took some pictures. We see Rail Lanes 233, which actually served the Port of San Antonio. The Commonwealth Railways 1551 was built for the Inner Harbor Railroad in Chicago, another short line in the Midwest. And Mid-Michigan's number 24, which was built for the Great Northern. These are old-time locomotives that you would see in museums, and they're still out there doing what they do. Now, number 3, the Buckingham Branch Railroad, a relatively new company based in Dillon, Virginia, just on the other side of Charlottesville, if you're from that area. They travel on 275 miles of track in the heart of the state, a fairly large shoreline. They were founded in 1989 by CSX retiree Robert Bryant, and the company began with an acquisition of a 16-mile long branch from CSX's James River subdivision. This company then was so small, they started with one locomotive and one caboose and one little rail line. And now over the years they have grown to become a very large short line that serves a vital part in the state. They transport coal and grain by interchanging with CSX, and right here in the area they interchange with Norfolk Southern to distribute mixed freight. As your professor knows, your professors from the Eastern Shore, they were home to the Eastern Shore Railroad, and they were formerly known as the Bay Coast. They ceased operations in 2018. The Buckingham Branch has taken over some of the operations. And here's a little paragraph to explain part of what they took over. The one that sticks out the most, between the 6.7 and Diamond Springs, 3 minutes up the road that goes right by the new outlet malls. Your professor actually tagged me in a picture when they were running the locomotive, and they're quickly getting this line back open. And I really hope that business continues to grow. Now,